Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hi, everyone. This is Tammy Patzer, and I'm really excited because today's guest is an international best-selling author and international speaker, and she has a forthcoming trilogy coming out soon called The Next Day Came. Let me tell you a little bit about Kathy Dart Wagner. Kathy is a Goldstar mother, a result of her oldest son killed on active duty in the U.S. Navy during Operation Iraqi Freedom. She's the vice president of her local chapter where her volunteerism helps veterans, their families, and the community. Kathy Dart Wagner also speaks on the Goldstar Mothers program's behalf, promotes awareness of their service, and raises contributions for the Goldstar Mother organization. She also has traveled the world helping hundreds of people on the topics of loss, the loss of multiple children and only children, gun violence, grief, addiction, learning disability, survival, and how to thrive. And of course, she has profound empathy, and she empowers people to find the purpose in their pain and to transform that purpose into a new passion. She's appeared on NBC News. She has shared the stage with Joint Chief of Staff General Mark Miley, Governor Rick Scott, country singer Rocky Lynn, Nancy Matthews, Amanda Rose, Igor, Gary Cox, Bob Circosta, Dr. Leidy Louie, Matt Bachek, JT Fox, and Shannon Gronich, among some of the people you may know. And she's done a few other things that are pretty interesting, like bending steel with Bert Oliva. She jumped at 14,000 feet with the U.S. Army elite parachute team, the Golden Knights. And of course, she has discovered ways to not only survive, but to thrive under extreme circumstances. Now, I want to circle back a little bit and tell you all about the trilogy, The Next Day Came, because Kathy not only lost her son in Operation Iraqi Freedom, she also lost a second son, her two children, in another murder incident. So she really has gone on a journey through depression, addiction. She planned her suicide. And of course, she's here today because her big mission is to honor her sons in everything she says and does while being the person her sons believed her to be. So welcome, Kathy.
Well, thank you, Tammy. I really appreciate you having me on today. This is a wonderful experience to share my story and to honor my sons.
Well, you really, if you look at it, I mean, number one, the worst thing any mother could ever have happen to her would be to lose a child. And you not only lost one, but lost two within 2 years. And I don't know exactly the timeline, but you can actually tell me more and the audience more about that, because I think it's important because you're writing a trilogy. So that means 3. So I know that you have one book about one of your sons, one about a second son, and then the third book is all about you and how you actually survived this ordeal. So if you could tell me, number one, I would love to know more about your journey. And you talk about a promise, that you made a promise to your sons, and I would love to know more about that and your big why. So I'm going to go ahead and let you tell me more about your story.
Okay. Well, it's kind of an interesting story altogether. The book actually started out to be a book, but as I started writing it 2 years ago on Super Bowl Sunday, I had a house full of people, party going on. And all of a sudden, I was just drawn to open up my computer, and I typed chapter 1 and I started writing. And I truly believe that my 2 sons are helping me from up above, because they seem to remember things that I don't remember, but it just comes out. And the words just kept coming out until it literally has to be 3 books, or it would be War and Peace 2. It's so big. It's 180,000 words right now. So it turned out I started telling the story of Jeffrey, my youngest son. He was killed in a robbery at 18, but he also had a genius IQ of 163 and acute dyslexia. So it goes into the whole story of learning disabilities, the struggles with the public school system. I had to put him in private schools, at-risk schools. It cost me $100,000 and a bankruptcy to get him through high school. But I made a promise to that 5-year-old little boy when he was diagnosed that I would get him through high school, and I did. And then 2 months later, a guy put a sawed-off shotgun on his stomach and pulled the trigger in a robbery in Las Vegas at 18. So the first book is all about his story and how all that transpired, and it's very very heartfelt. He was an old soul. I always told people he was 4 going on 40. A lot of times, I got divorced when they were 3 and 8 months old. And a lot of times when I was struggling and depressed and, as a single parent trying to get through, he would sit on my lap and tell me it was going to be okay and we were going to make it. So he was a really cool kid. And the second book starts at 9/11 because my older son was in the Navy and I thought he would be safe, but 9/11 changed everything because he, of course, volunteered to go first so somebody with a wife and kid didn't have to go, or a mortgage. And I truly believed he would be safe, that, the universe would not take another child from me, but they did. So, but the promise you talked about was to my 2 kids. Growing up, I always told them how important an education was, that with an education you could do anything and they could never take that away from you. So I worked hard to raise them as a single mom. And I guess along the way, I promised them that when they grew up, I would go to college and get a, quote, easier job. So when they died, that's literally what I did. I went to college for 6 years and I got 2 degrees in their honor. I got a bachelor's and master's degree, 1 for each of them in their honor. So that was the first big promise that kept me alive for the first 6 years of going forward and healing.
So what was the degree that you ended up getting?
I ended up getting it in criminal justice. I think I was trying to figure out why people killed my kids. Now, my older son, although he was killed during Operation Iraqi Freedom, he had gone to the war and come back. He was killed in a homicide at 24.
So he wasn't actually killed in Iraq. He actually was killed in a homicide after he returned?
Yes, he had gone and come back, and he was on his way to leave for his second tour. And as he was on his way to the base, he was killed in a homicide, a felony hit and run.
Oh my goodness. Were either one of your son's cases solved?
Yes, the first one was they caught the guy and they plea bargained it to manslaughter with use of a deadly weapon, and he did less than 12 years on 20, and he's out. And the second one, they never caught the people. They kind of botched the investigation. So your trilogy, obviously, the story of Jeffrey is in the first right
book.
And Bud is in the second book.
And then Bud is the
Bud
second.
is, well, that's not his real name, but I've never called him his real name.
Hey, I have Uncle Bud.
Yeah.
And then the third book, In the Next Day Came, is your story.
Absolutely. It starts after Bud is killed because I go on and finish my college degrees in their honor. And then I have to find another purpose to keep going. And that's the thing about a purpose, is it can constantly change as long as you keep finding the next thing to do. And to me, the thing that helped me heal was helping other people. When I went to college, I started a mentoring program and I mentored students. And then when I finished college, I got involved in the Goldstar Mothers. And then, like you were saying, I helped the veterans and their families and the community. And that everything like helping other people opened my heart and allowed me to heal. And then writing these books, I feel, are going to help people to heal, and sharing my story will help people to heal. And I'll be able maybe to coach people or share my story, and,
So I wanted to ask you more about that because, again, the big thing is, here you are. This is 2020. So obviously, all of these things happened. How long ago now?
Well, actually, Jeffrey was actually murdered on March 26, 2001. So it'll be 19 years this week.
Okay, so we're actually
coming up on an anniversary. Yeah,
I kind of feel, I think they're here listening in.
Oh, they're always here. Trust me.
But you basically, again, you survived the loss of not one, but two children. So now your mission, you're focusing on helping other mothers who've lost a child or children. And you actually said that you've gone through this process, and now you're out speaking. Of course, you've got the books. So what would you say are the steps that someone needs to go through to empower themselves from going from this unimaginable pain to not only surviving, but actually finding that purpose and moving into thriving?
Well, I actually have what I call the Thriver program, which there's 7 steps, but there's 3 empowering steps to reboot, recharge, and reclaim your life. And in my speech I use, which I can kind of give you just a brief of that. The T in thriving, you got to move from tragedy to triumph. And to me, that was all about giving back, like we were talking about. Many people feel like they can't talk about what happened or share it with other people. And they try to act strong and like they've got it all together. But when it comes to dealing with loss, not talking about that loss leaves it all stuffed inside in your emotions. And when you share that story, it does a lot of things. It gives you power to get through the pain. It honors and respects your feelings, and it lets you know that it's okay to have those feelings, because you go through a lot of emotions. You can laugh in the day, you can cry in the next minute. It's very, very traumatic to go through it. But the main thing is you realize you're not alone. When you share your story, you'll be amazed how many other people have similar or the same stories, and it just opens them up. But by not sharing, you're really just locking yourself up, and then you think you're crazy, and it helps others by sharing your story. So that's one of the first things I try to teach people, is to move, you move to the triumph out of the pain and from the blessing. And then the second step is to handle what I call the SCWs, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, because I spent a lot of time alone, and I could sit there and do the shoulda, coulda, wouldas forever. What if I'd have done this? Would Jeffrey still be alive? Or if I could have done this, would Bud still be alive? Like, he was my only son. Should I have contacted the military and not let him go to war? You can play those games forever, but it's not going to change anything. They'll keep you from sleeping. You'll get out of bed exhausted, and so playing the coulda, shoulda, woulda just isn't going to help you. So the best way I've learned to deal with that was to have a very structured routine. I got up, I went to college, I got good grades, and I actually learned how to play golf in college. I got physically active. My kids used to swim competitively, so I learned how to swim competitively. It just was something I could do that they used to do. I even learned how to do that flip at the end of the pool, and how to do the breathing. And I also got a new puppy, which, was, it was interesting because my spouse now said we could either adopt or we could get a puppy. And I said, well, I'm 2 for 2 on kids. I better not get another one. I said, let's get a puppy. So people always think I have kind of a weird humor, but that's the way I dealt with it, was humor too. Laughing is one of the best medicines for pain and hurt. Even if you just laugh for a little bit, it makes it better. So, but there's other things you could do, like meditate, pray, jog, walk, lift weights, read books, anything that takes your mind from it.
So basically, like what you were saying is you actually shifted your energies into doing something positive and productive.
Correct.
And then also things that maybe you wouldn't have even thought of, like you said, you learned how to play golf.
Right. And
that
how to
helped
swim.
you. And before we were talking, you said, yes, smacking that little ball around was really helpful. And so, again, that expended that energy out into the world. So you said reboot, recharge, reclaim.
Reclaim your life, yeah.
So when you say reclaim your life, what does that mean? And how do you do that? I mean, obviously, you've been working on this for 19 years. Mm-hmm. What can you look back and see little milestones? Obviously, you had a period of 2 years before the second one, but what was happening in that 2-year period before your second son was killed?
Well, it's kind of interesting because I go into that in my book. And during that 2 years, I had to focus on my older son. My two sons were born on the same day, 3 years apart, which gave them a really weird connection. And when his brother died, he didn't want to have his birthday anymore. And, my focus was on him and keeping him going. And I kind of got put in the back seat by people. They didn't, it was all, my whole focus was on him. And then when he died, people just assumed, well, she survived one kid dying, she's going to be fine with the other kid dying. And it was a very strange situation. I go into it in the trilogy. People were like, well, why didn't you just take her to the hospital? You should have called an ambulance or something. Because I literally went into shock. And it's kind of interesting how the whole thing happened looking back. But when you have other children and that, I think in a way it helps, although they'll tell you that it's still, you still have that trauma of losing that child. You'll never get over that. But I think if you keep focused on other things, it helps to do that, and like, I don't get grandchildren. Other people have grandchildren. And I tell a story in the book about being at the beauty salon one day, and the two ladies sitting next to me complained about their children and grandchildren the whole time. And when I got up, I told them, I said, you're blessed to have them. You should appreciate them. I don't have them and will never will. And the two hairdressers applauded me when I walked out, because they were tired of listening to the story too. People don't realize the blessings they have. And maybe what's going on now with this coronavirus, people are learning that, they're home with their children and their families, that maybe there's a little more to life than work and everything else. Hopefully, anyway, that something good will come out of it. You got to find the positive.
Well, I think that is a true statement. Most people, we take for granted we take for granted our relationships, our children, our pets, until all of a sudden we have to stop. And even many people now who are used to going to work and their kids are at home now, they don't quite know how to handle being at home and dealing with this. So it is a time to, like exactly what you said, it's time to reboot, recharge, and reclaim. So it sounds to me like everything you're teaching can actually be applied to any type of loss or situation, not just obviously the children losing a child, but many of us are losing our lives the way they were. And of course, it is not as dramatic as a death where that's a death is an ending. But many people's lives today are ending as they knew them, because even if it's a short time, they're getting a taste of, not being able to leave their homes. They're worried. There's a lot of fear involved. I wanted to go back to the Goldstar mother, and you go out and you speak for that organization. You mentioned that you talk about the reboot, recharge, and reclaim. Is that part of the speech that you typically give when you go out and speak?
Yeah, I always do that. And it's funny that because I always just put the two boys together, I always share the story together because to me, that's my story. But a lot of times I speak at the Memorial Day, Veterans Day. I speak at churches for people, and just sharing that story, like you're saying, it doesn't matter what you lose. I happen to have the ultimate loss of losing not only two children, but all my children. I don't have any other children. I don't get the grandchildren, but it doesn't matter what you lose. You could lose a job. You could lose your home. You could lose a relationship. I just had friends that lost two dogs and they're just devastated because to them that was their children. So it doesn't matter. You have to go through the same process, and you have to go through that pain, and you have to find a purpose, and hopefully you can find a positive out of that pain to move forward. Losing my children, now I couldn't have told you that in the first 10 years, but losing my children has actually made me a better person. I'm a much kinder person. I take more time. I look at things differently. I'm a much more loving person because I realize that every day is a gift and there's no guarantee we're going to have tomorrow. So you should enjoy today, be kind to the people that you have in your life, and enjoy the things you do have in your life, because we're very blessed with the things we have. And I think this virus is showing us that we're very blessed to have it, because there's people who don't have the same things we have. And
right. We're used to having a lot of freedoms and being able to go to the grocery store and everything is there. And all of a sudden it's not. So we're really getting a taste of what we really should be
appreciative of and thankful. Yeah.
You talked about the Thriver program. Can you mentioned what T, can you go through I take it that Thriver.
Well, the H is handling the SCWs, the shoulda, coulda, woulda, and then the R is refining your big purpose.
Okay.
You have to find and focus on your purpose, and it may be your next purpose. Like to me, I was saying I went to college and I fulfilled that promise. Then I got involved in the Goldstar Mothers, and then writing this book has become my purpose. Your purpose is always changing. You can always have a different purpose or refine it and make it a more focused purpose. To me, this trilogy it actually honors my children, and it shows that their life was more than just death. They touch so many people. For example, I was on Facebook one day and I was talking to a friend of my son, Bud, that was in the Navy with him. And there was a couple other guys came on, and he told them, he said, "This is Bud's mom." And they wrote the nicest things about Bud and how he had changed their life and how they had affected their lives. And I mean, he was only here 24 years, but they both affected so many people's lives and changed lives. And everybody comes here for a purpose. So you want to fulfill that purpose.
And just like what you just said, not only while they were living, they touched people's lives. Now through you, they're going to touch many more hundreds, thousands. They could touch millions of lives, even though they're not here, through you, because you're spreading the message of what their lives meant. And then you're out there helping people. So you've got the THR, and then there's IBER.
Yeah, I don't have them all written down with me right now, but each one.
So you basically have put together this a formula or a program where you can walk people through so that it won't take them 20 years or 10 years to get through the process of going from pain to purpose to their passion.
And that's what I hope these books will do, because when this happened to me 19 years ago, there wasn't anything. I I saw a psychiatrist for 6 months, which was very helpful because she wasn't one of those psychiatrists that just wanted you to sit there. She's like, honor your children, keep your promises, move forward, go to college, do the things that they can't do. In fact, I think you mentioned about me jumping out of the airplane. That jumping out of that airplane was called the leap of faith. And that's what it was to me. I had no intention of jumping out of an airplane at 14,000 feet, but it's something my sons, both of them would have done that because they were very adventurous. And I did it for them. And when I jumped, they wrote their names on my hands. I had Bud on one hand and Jeff on one hand in black marker. And when I jumped, they were on my hands. They jumped with me. And
wow,
it was something they would do. It was a leap of faith, So
I saw you, and I saw that the Army guy, you were actually jumping with the Golden Knights parachute team. And I was thinking to myself, wow. But that is so interesting to me because, like you said, the leap of faith, and that is like a big metaphor for life.
It is.
And what you're actually doing. You also, what was it? You bent steel with Bert Oliva.
Yeah, Bert Oliva.
What was that? How did you bend steel?
Well, they take you up on the stage and they put a piece of, what do they call that? Wrought iron.
Wrought iron.
And they put it on your throat right here and another person's throat. And then he talks to you and he talks to you about letting go of your fears and your anxieties and that. And then literally you walk towards each other and this half-inch piece of wrought iron bends as you walk. You just have to have faith and trust that what he's saying is going to work. Sometimes he has people walk through fire, I guess, but he didn't do that day. It was just bending the steel. I actually have the video of it. It's pretty cool. And I mean, it's like right here in your throat.
So my question to you on both of those experiences, obviously the leap of faith and then bending that wrought iron, how does that help you in your daily lives? Because I know a lot of people, they walk on fire, they're bending the wrought iron, they're leaping out of airplanes. And how does doing those extreme adventurous things that are really, really scary, how does that help you take that leap of faith in your real life when it comes down to the real things that you deal with every day? What's your opinion on that? I
just have this utmost belief that I am right where I'm supposed to be and I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And my purpose is to share this story with people and to share the legacy of my two sons and to be the person they believe me to be. And that when it's my time to go, I'm going to go. It doesn't matter. So do everything I can do between now and then, because there's no guarantee how long we're going to be here. So I'm not really afraid of anything. In fact, Kim always laughs, my spouse, when I get on a plane, I just tell people, I said, you know what, you're all safe because I'm on the plane because I'm not going to go. I got a long time to be here, so you're all safe. It's kind of funny. I just feel very confident that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and I don't worry about it anymore. It's just, there's not a lot of things that are really important to worry about anymore. Like even this illness going around. If I'm going to get it, I'm going to get it, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to because I got a big purpose right now that I got to fulfill. So
yes, well, you have a huge message and a huge mission, and you definitely have a huge purpose. So I really think it's so interesting to me because you said that you want to live your life every day to be the person that your sons thought you were.
Believe me to be, yes.
Yeah, that they believed you to be. And I just think that is such a beautiful way to live because, as you were talking about the little boy sitting on your lap telling you everything's going to be okay. that reminded me of my children because my children have always been the reason why when things got rough, it was like, oh, well, I've got to keep moving forward because I've got to take care of these kids.
Absolutely. It's a huge responsibility
to get them. And I think that, most parents out there, the children are like, oh my God, I've got to be somebody better than I thought I could ever be because I have these children and I'm responsible for them. So if somebody wants to reach out and talk to you or work with you, how should they be getting in contact with you?
Well, the easiest way to get me is to text the word Goldstar, all together, one word, Goldstar, to 64600. Or they can go to my webpage, is kdwagner.com.
Okay, and just to let everyone know, am I correct that when your books come out, they'll be available through the normal outlets such as bookstores and also Amazon?
Correct. And they'll come out one at a time, and then they'll come out after they're all three out, they'll be re-released as a set, is my understanding. So
okay, great. And can you repeat the name of your book? It's The Next Day Came.
Correct.
And I know that you're doing a lot of work to get those done, but I'm really looking forward to that. The Next Day Came, and I think that really says it about what you're talking about because you became a thriver.
Right. Well, the people always ask me, how did I survive losing 2 children in 2 years? And I said, well, the next day came, and then the next day came, and then the next day came. And I just kept going because I had promises I had to keep, and then I had purposes I had to fulfill, and the next day came. And that's just what I decided to call this. I hope it stays that way. And then I also have a little saying I like to say is sometimes you have to let go of the vision of how you thought your life would turn out and learn to find the joy in the life you've been dealt. And that's kind of a little sign I have put up here because, I never imagined this would be how my life turned out when I raised these 2 little boys. I always thought they would take care of me when I got old. And now I look at like, well, who's going to take care of me when I get old? But that's okay. It'll all work out. I have faith.
Well, I think that I'm looking forward to the trilogy, The Next Day Came, because everything that you've talked about today is very relevant to the world today. And no matter what the pain is, people need to know that there is hope and that the next day will come.
It absolutely will come, whether you want it to or not. The damn thing kept coming in my story.
Well, Kathy, thank you so much. And before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to add for people to understand and know?
Well, I just want people to have hope. Don't give up hope.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.